Welcome back, my guys. It is a Pitre podcast. So, I wanted to talk about something that's going viral, super random. It's going to be a super random switch from, talking about the revolution in Nepal and then talking about this subject. But I want to talk about Bad Bunny. I want to talk about Bad Bunny and how he is going to be performing at the Super Bowl. So, I was kind of surprised at it, to be honest with you. I'm not that surprised because he's the second biggest artist in the world, literally right behind Taylor Swift. So it kind of makes sense from like a artist impact kind of standpoint. But I was surprised at kind of like the backlash of it all, A lot of people were complaining online, especially for one demographic, was shitting on it, was not happy about it, and all this other stuff. So I want to talk about just who is Bad Bunny, right? Who's Bad Bunny? Where is Bad Bunny? Why is Bad Bunny? How's Bad Bunny? When's Bad Bunny? So I want to talk about all of that basically. So this is like for my white viewers, man. I'm not gonna lie, because I know who Bad Bunny is. Obviously, I'm Puerto Rican. I gotta bring out the Puerto Rican chain for this one. Feel me, tu sabe. Anyway, I know who he is, so I want to educate, my white peeps, the white man. I want to educate the white man who Bad Bunny is, his impact, why he's important, kind of like the backlash surrounding him performing at the Super Bowl for next year, and kind of like why I think the NFL is going with Bad Bunny for this pick, which I haven't seen anyone else talk about yet, and I thought it was pretty obvious. So basically, let's talk about Bad Bunny, right? So let me pull up. I had some notes down for Bad Bunny. So who the fuck is Bad Bunny, right? Who is he? Why is his name Bad Bunny? Actually, don't know why his name Bad Bunny. It's actually a really good question. I'm always wondering that myself. All right, so Bad Bunny, right? His real name is Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, right? He's a Puerto Rican rapper, reggaeton singer. He's one of the most successful Latin music artists in the world and of all time. So he's known for blending reggaeton, Latin trap, hip hop, and pop. So he was born in 1994 in Vega Baja, Puerto Rico. So he rose to fame like around 2006, 2017 through SoundCloud and collaborations with artists like Daddy Yankee, J Balvin, Cardi B. So a lot of artists that came from SoundCloud. If you don't know what SoundCloud is, SoundCloud was a platform that you can, like regular people can just upload their music on. You can find just music from random artists, right? So there was like some relatively famous artists who would utilize it. There was other artists who were just coming up that would post their stuff on SoundCloud, and SoundCloud had a really big community. You could just find artists through SoundCloud. I'm not even sure if SoundCloud's still around anymore. So he has many hit songs like Titi Mi Pregunto, Moscow Mule, Taquiti. So he has won multiple Grammy and Latin Grammy awards. So this man has won awards in the highest of highs as far as like the awards you can win if in music. So he is famous for breaking gender norms in fashion and music, often wearing colorful gender fluid outfits. So that's one thing that really set him apart from the other reggaeton singers, right? Because Latin America is very homophobic, right? It's notoriously, historically homophobic. Like, it's very machismo. You can't really be wearing pink as a man, that kind of stuff, There's a lot of stuff you can't do. You can't have makeup on, like, there's something called a maricon, right? Maricon means it means the F word. And I'm not talking about fuck. So that's what it means, right? And if you do stuff like that, you're called a maricon. And if you're a little fruity, you're called a maricon. That's just what it is, right? So he was like the first reggaeton artist that kind of bridged that gap, if you will, and started to wear like that gender fluid kind of stuff and like leaned into the gay, if you will. He really started to do that around 2017, 2018. And I think that's the reason why he became so popular amongst women. Because when you look at Bad Bunny as far as like his career, right? So he went from like a traditional trapero, which is like a trap singer who made like very like, reggaeton songs or music that was geared towards like basically like violence. Then he transitioned into like, being very gender fluid and, body positive, wearing makeup, and like there's a time where he cross-dressed as a woman for a video and all this other stuff. So he went in that route, which it was gaining popularity during the mid 2010s, the late 2010s. So like around 2016, 2017, 2018, all that stuff started to become popular, especially amongst women. And again, the Latin community as a whole historically has been very anti whatever that is, right? They don't like that. Especially the older generation. Newer generation, and we're accepting of it. The older generation, they don't like that, right? So that's what really set him apart from the other basically from the other reggaeton singers at that time. Not only that, he really filled in a gap for reggaeton, especially for Puerto Rican reggaeton, in my personal opinion. So we had the golden era of reggaeton, right, which is the early 2000s. Now, I'm going to venture into the history of reggaeton. So if you're not familiar with that, genre, you have some insight into, okay, why is this popular? Why is this beloved in Latin America? How this came to be, etc. So basically, reggaeton, right? It's basically a variation of reggae, which is music from Jamaica. So Puerto Rico created reggaeton, and I'm gonna get into that too, because a lot of people are saying they didn't, and I'm about to fucking flame y'all. So it was influenced by reggae, right? Because Puerto Rico is in the Caribbean. It's not far away from Jamaica, right? So the Caribbean, a lot of the times, the culture is influencing within each other, right? Because Caribbean is not that big. It's pretty small. So the climate's similar, the lifestyle is similar. So there's a lot of similar influences there. So, of course, reggae is in English. So what had happened was, in the early 1990s, there was an artist, I forgot his name. He was from Panama. He translated reggae songs from English to Spanish. And he was performing that, with the artist's consent. He was performing it in Panama. He was performing it in Latin America, especially around the Caribbean, where it was popular. So he translated reggae songs into Spanish, and that is what kind of kicked off the genre of reggaeton. As far as the genre of reggaeton and how we know it today, that was created in Puerto Rico. 100%. That was created in Puerto Rico by Puerto Rican artists. So people would say, oh, it was created in Panama. It's not created in Panama. Translating reggae from English to Spanish is not the same as creating reggaeton as a genre. Those two genres are very different. Yes, reggaeton draws inspiration from reggae, 100%. If there wasn't reggae, there wouldn't be reggaeton. I do agree on that. And yes, translating into Spanish did kick off, reggaeton as a genre, 100%. It heavily influenced it. But there's a clear distinction between translating reggae into Spanish and what reggaeton is and or was. So that's my hot take there. That's my 2 cents. It is what it is. So Puerto Rican artists basically created reggaeton. It became popular in that late 1990s, mid 1990s, and then it transformed into basically the reggaeton that we know it today in the early 2000s, right? And in the early 2000s, the only artists that were making reggaeton were Puerto Rican, right? Those are the only artists. And it started to gain a lot of traction. So historically, when it comes to Latin America, each country has different genres of music, so to say, right? So, for instance, in Puerto Rico, we listen to reggaeton, salsa, I would say bachata as well. Bachata and merengue as well. But mostly reggaeton and salsa. Now, in Dominican Republic, you have bachata merengue, but they also listen to reggaeton. They have dembow, which is like a different version, an offset of reggaeton. So they have their own genres, right? In Mexico, they have cumbia, right? I don't like that form of music. In other countries in Latin America, they have cumbia as well. They have their own variations of different types of music that they listen to. But for the most part, all of Latin America is listening to salsa. Not so much bachata and merengue, but definitely salsa is widely listened to throughout all Latin America. Of course, there's some variance between the different countries there, but for the most part, if I had to pick one genre that was listened to throughout all of Latin America, it would probably be salsa. So, and you have Spanish rock and those kind of different genres that I never grew up listening to, so I don't like personally. It is what it is. Cumbia being one of those genres. So basically, especially within Puerto Rico, right? in the 1990s, you had very popular salsa artists. Like you have Elvis Crespo, you had Mark Anthony coming on the scene. You still had Frankie Ruiz. You still had some major artists and that kind of stuff. But I feel like when it comes to salsa, the golden age is probably like the 80s, like around that time. So especially coming into the 2000s, the only artists that we really had, Crespo, yes, for the most part, and you also had Mark Anthony coming on the scene, but musically, I feel like there was kind of a void that needed to be filled that reggaeton kind of plugged into, if you will. So those are so many artists that were coming out from Puerto Rico that were just specifically making reggaeton. There wasn't as many artists making salsa anymore for Puerto Rico during that time period. This kind of all transferred into reggaeton, right? So yeah, you had like Mark Anthony and that kind of stuff, but most artists who were Puerto Rican during that time period, they were making reggaeton, and reggaeton was only being made by Puerto Rican artists. It kind of is what put Puerto Rico on the map musically, right? It became the freaking capital of reggaeton. And listen, I'm going to say this too, right? Because there's some people that are just, especially Colombians, they're like, oh, la capital de reggaeton is Medellin and all that bullshit. Listen, la capital, la reggaeton will now and will always be La Isla del Encanto, Puerto Rico, okay? It will never be Colombia, ever. I don't give a fuck. It will never be Colombia. It would always be Puerto Rico. From now until forever, it would always be Puerto Rico. When you stack up the amount of artists that came from Colombia versus the amount of artists that are in Puerto Rico, and the impact that we've had in the genre, it doesn't even come close. Yes, dude. Yes, does Colombia have a lot of, good reggaeton singers now? 100%. Are they the number 2 spot as far as country wise for reggaeton? Yes. And I listen to a lot of Colombian reggaeton singers? Yes. Reggaeton artists? Yes. But it's not the capital of reggaeton, bro. Always be Puerto Rico. So again, the golden age of reggaeton was early 2000s with Daddy Yankee, with Zion E. Lennox, with Rakimi Kenway. Like there were so many fucking artists coming out that time that made such an impact on the genre and started to become worldwide and definitely became more renowned within Latin America as a whole, right? So during that time period, kicked off reggaeton being favorited across all of Latin America. Now, every single Latin American country listens to reggaeton. If you take the one genre that's listened across the most frequently across all of Latin America, it would probably be reggaeton, to be entirely honest with you. But yeah, that was the golden age of reggaeton, and I feel like during the mid 2010s, like 2010s, I felt like reggaeton kind of fall off, at least for me. I feel like there was a void there, I feel like we're in the dark ages of reggaeton, because a lot of the artists that were producing, reggaeton during the golden ages, the early 2010s, they were kind of at the tail end of their career. The music wasn't the same. A lot of there was artists that they weren't necessarily in the band with like 2 artists that would be together and they will make music together. They were breaking up and that kind of stuff. So I feel like the 2010s, man, there was a lot of good reggaeton music that came out in the 2010s. Don't get me wrong, but when you look at the classics, it's mostly from that early 2000s era. So I felt like there was a void in reggaeton during the 2010s, especially the tail end of 2010s, like 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2015, etc. I feel like there was a void there and there was an artist that needed to step up. Because when it comes to reggaeton as a whole, the biggest artist up until Bad Bunny was Daddy Yankee. Is Bad Bunny bigger than Daddy Yankee? I mean, Bad Bunny's still in the middle of his career and the height of his career, but I'm not trying to belittle Daddy Yankee's impact, but when you look at it from a global scale, I think Bad Bunny is the biggest artist at this point. But I don't think there would be a Bad Bunny without Daddy Yankee. So, giving credence to, the OG who really put the whole genre and the freaking island on the map there. But again, during that 2010s time period, there wasn't like a real artist. Daddy Yankee was, 15 years removed from his prime, basically, at that, 10 years removed from his prime, basically, at that time. He really wasn't on top of the game anymore. And I felt like, And there was a Colombian artist that's starting to come up on the scene too, like J Balvin, Maluma. That was before Feed. I think Karol G really started to come out there in that time too. So there was a rise in Colombian artists too, and I feel like there was kind of like a void in Puerto Rico as far as reggaeton wise. And there was a couple artists that were coming up like during that time, Ozuna and Anuel, and Bad Bunny was one of them. And Bad Bunny kind of just like take the reins for all of reggaeton and kind of just brought it, from the ground into the stratosphere, if you will. So his impact on the genre has been immense. He took a genre that historically was just popular from Latin America, been popular from Puerto Rico, made it popular globally. And listen, man, you can go to I'm in Philly, bro. Philly's white as fuck. I can go to a club in Philly. I'm probably going to hear a Bad Bunny song at that. By sometime throughout the night, I might hear a Bad Bunny song, man. Bunch of fucking white people. Don't even know what the dude's saying. I might hear that song come up, You can't say that for other artists. Can't say that for other genres that are not spoken in English in America in a predominantly white area. So it's like, his impact is profound enough in the genre. He kind of took the reins during that time and became the king for the fucking rey of reggaeton, bro, for real. And I do think that him leading into that gender fluidity during that time period in the late 2010s, while it was kind of popping off, becoming, some people in this country would say a problem. I'm not going to say that, but, it becoming more culturally renowned. I think he leaned into it, especially for something that's, not seen in Latin America, especially. And I think that's in part why he became so famous and so renowned within the space. So that was a big runaround into why. That was a huge runaround into, how he became kind of like world renowned and or famous, right? So he had just had a tour. I hinted to it in the beginning of the podcast that he had just had a tour. And it was centered within Puerto Rico, right? And it's one of the most successful concerts it's one of the most successful concerts ever, essentially. Not just within, a Latin music artist, but just music artists as a whole, right? So basically he kicked off an album that it's really geared towards Puerto Rico in that it talks about like the history of Puerto Rico. It's very like entrenched within Puerto Rican culture and that kind of stuff. So not only that, but like not just within Puerto Rico, but like Puerto Rican culture in New York, and where there's a huge majority population of Puerto Ricans within New York, me being one of them. So he was really talking about the culture in that regard, and he was going to kick off the tour in the United States first and then go internationally. Then with ICE and everything like that broke out, he was like, you know what? Of course, my people, Puerto Ricans, we're naturalized citizens, so you can't tell us shit is what it is. But, other Latinos are definitely going to go to his concerts, show love, show support. And he was worried that these Latinos are going to be basically rounded up by ICE and booted out of the country. So he was just like, yo, fuck it. I'm just going to do my concert that's about Puerto Rico, my love for Puerto Rico, in Puerto Rico. And if you want to see the concert, you got to come here to do it, basically. And that has had such a huge impact on Puerto Rico, just from a revenue standpoint, man. From a revenue standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, it's had such a fucking huge impact. At first, I thought, damn, like, is it really going to is it really good? I know it's going to work. I know it's going to be successful, but I never expected it to be this successful, you know? So just to get into some figures on how that performed, basically. So he did 30 residency shows, right? So he did 30 shows in Puerto Rico. The venue was, fucking Jose Miguel Agorolot. I never heard that last name ever in my entire life. Coliseum in San Juan. Capacity is about 19,000. So the economic impact, going into the numbers, right? So between 200 million to 380 million USD in direct and related spending, visitor spending, ticket sales, and tourism, right? So the total benefit in Puerto Rico from a broader effect was estimated to be $713 million if you include all the economic ripples and their effects. So he's brought in almost $800 million of revenue into Puerto Rico, right? So there's one saying that's always like, one man can't make a change. Dude, one man 100% can make a change, and he is the living proof of that change and that and benefit that Puerto Rico was able to see during this time period. Like, he brought literally almost $1 billion economically into Puerto Rico. Because when people are going to the concerts, you know, they're booking Airbnbs, they're booking hotels, they're going to dinners, they're going to bars, they're going sightseeing. The average stay for these people would be like 9 days too. So they would be there for an entire week spending money on the island, you know, which is good for the island because the island fucking needs it. So he has made such a profound impact into Puerto Rico. And like, economically, man, you can't say shit. No Puerto Rican can say shit about Bad Bunny, even though none of us ever did. But yo, he played his part, man. He 100% played his part, almost bringing in $1 billion into Puerto Rico and having thousands of people. Like, I think almost 600,000 people have visited during that tour. People that, a lot of them have never even been to Puerto Rico. You know, there's people that from the fucking Europe, you know, and different places throughout the world that came to Puerto Rico that would probably come back again because they love the island, because the island's a fucking vibe. So, you know, that's going to be ongoing perpetual revenue that's going to be streaming in. And not only that, but now you have other artists that can possibly do the same as well, because there's other big Puerto Rican artists just outside of Bad Bunny, not as big as Bad Bunny, but they're noteworthy too, like Anuel, Osuna, Omar Courts. You know, there's so many artists that are established and are rising that can do the exact same thing, that can bring in those visitors and benefit the island as a whole, right? So that was the impact of his last concert on the island, right? Now, getting into the controversy of him performing in a Super Bowl, like, listen, he is the second biggest artist in the world, numbers wise, right? His last like 3 albums were number 1 listened to on Spotify and throughout the entire world, right? So he's the second biggest artist in the world outside of Taylor Swift. It only makes sense for him, for someone of that magnitude, to perform at the Super Bowl, right? And I guess the biggest controversy behind that was a lot of people, yo, I gotta call you out, a lot of white people. I ain't hear my brothers talking bullshit about Bad Bunny on Instagram in the comments. I ain't hear my brothers talking none of that bullshit. I ain't hear Asian people talking about it, I hear Indian people talking about it. I just heard white people talking about this. So you guys gotta take some slack for this one, man, unfortunately. So a lot of people online complaining, yo, this is America. If there's a performance in the Super Bowl, it should be in English. Why does it have to be in Spanish? Why do we have to conform to hearing Spanish? It should be in English. This is America. You speak English. Blah, blah, blah. Like, yo, first off, we're American. We're American. We're American. We're naturalized American. We have been for the last 120 years, you know? So we've been American since fucking like 1880 something. So what are you complaining about? Like, we're American. Like, America colonized us. We never wanted to be part of America. We never wanted to be part of America, man. We were happy being part of Spain, and you guys came in and said, nah, you're part of us now. But not only that, you guys try to force English on us. So you try to force the entire island to abandon Spanish and learn English, and the Puerto Rican people rebelled during that time. They're like, yo, fuck you. We're not learning English. We're not conforming to what you guys want, to what you colonizers want. We're going to continue with our language and our culture. And they basically did a big fuck you to the American government, the American people, right? That's the reason why Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico don't speak English. Now, there's Puerto Ricans like me who grew up mainland America who do speak English, and a lot of them don't even speak Spanish anymore at this point, because they've been, 2 to 3 generations in America, so they just, did away with Spanish as a whole, which I think is terrible. But, the people of Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rican people that live within Puerto Rico, they speak English, and they're not going to learn. I mean, they speak Spanish, they're not going to learn English because, the American government trying to make us conform into living by American ideals and speaking English, and we're just like, nah, man, we're not fucking doing that. And listen, imagine if someone like a European country, imagine France, colonized America and was like, yo, you motherfuckers better learn English now. I mean, you motherfuckers better learn French now. People of America would be like, yo, fuck you. We're going to keep speaking English. Who the fuck are you to tell us to force us to learn a language that we don't want to learn and be part of a country that we didn't even want to be a part of? And there's other people that are like, yo, why don't Puerto Rico just go on its own and stuff? You guys didn't let us. You literally did not let us. You did not let us have sovereignty, man. Like, literally. You did not let us have sovereignty for over 100 years. You guys were like, we rebelled. We tried. We protested. We fought it. And the government did not let us have sovereignty, man. The government was like, yo, we're taking your resources. We're taking your land, we're taking your most valuable export, which is sugarcane, and you're going to be part of the United States. We're going to draft you into every single world war because we need men, and you're going to have to deal with it. Fuck you. That's what it is. And if you want to come to mainland America, cool, I guess. But that's the only thing we're giving you. We're going to give you citizenship, and everything else we're going to fucking take. And we're like, great. Everything else is taken from us, and we're given citizenship for something that, for a country we don't even really want to be a part of. Now, there is mixed feelings as far as, Puerto Ricans still want to be part of America and Puerto Ricans finally wanting sovereignty. So that's like split down the middle between Puerto Ricans as a whole, both mainland and both people in Puerto Rico. But listen, man, you can't complain about us speaking Spanish when, one, we're part of fucking same country as you, literally. Like, we're Americans too. In a lot of the cases, for a lot of people, we're more American than you. We have been American far longer than you because a lot of people came from, Europe into Ellis Island during the turn of the century and, have been living in America ever since for almost in the past 100 years, a little over past 100 years. But we were citizens far before them. So it's like, the fuck? Like, you saying we're not American? Like, bro, we've been American longer than your family has been been in this country. Like, what are you saying right now? So again, man, I think a lot of it is just ignorance. A lot of people don't really know that history. When it comes to the history of Puerto Rico, is not talked about in the history books whatsoever. You literally are going to have to or talked about in school whatsoever, excuse me. So you're literally going to have to do your own research on the side to really learn any of this shit or know people who are Puerto Rican or grew up in the Puerto Rican community know any of this shit. So I don't blame them. I think they're just talking out of ignorance, which, is what it is. All of us do it at times, and I have no ill will, but it's just funny to see that, yo, speak English. This is America. Like, bro, we're literally American, and we don't speak, and Puerto Ricans don't speak English, especially in Puerto Rico, for a reason, right? So now to get into why I think the NFL chose Bad Bunny. So I think the NFL chose Bad Bunny for fucking numbers, literally numbers. That's all they did. They chose Bad Bunny for numbers. Because you got to look at it like this, right? He's the second biggest artist in the world. Second biggest artist in the world. Artists do not get paid for the Super Bowl. They don't get paid for the halftime performance, right? So Bad Bunny, one, is definitely doing this as to put Puerto Rico on the map, to put Latinos on the map, and to kind of be like a fuck you to the current administration that is deporting Latinos back to Latin America. So that's really why he's doing it. Not only that, I know his performance is going to be very politically geared, right? So you're going to see the history of Puerto Rico. A lot of regular Americans don't know the history of Puerto Rico. You guys are in for a treat. It's not great. It is a sad, terrible history, right? So you guys I'm going to enjoy watching it, man. You guys, you're going to see a lot of people squirm in that audience, man. I'm going to tell you that. So he's doing it to be politically charged. A lot of people are like, oh, he didn't want to do the tour in the United States, but now he wants to do the Super Bowl. That's bullshit. He didn't want to do a tour in the United States because his demographic is going to be predominantly Hispanic people who are going to be going to his concerts. When it comes to football, Hispanic people don't really watch football in this country. Yeah, there's some Latino fans who go hard for football, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, consensus-wise, Latinos are watching either baseball or soccer, right? We're not really watching football. I don't give a fuck about football, to be entirely honest with you. I don't give a damn about the sport. Most of the time, I don't even give a damn about the Super Bowl. I am going to give a damn this Super Bowl, I'll tell you that, but We don't really care about football that much, right? So he doesn't have to worry about his people possibly getting deported by ICE and ICE fucking raiding the Super Bowl, because his people are generally not fucking fans of the Super Bowl. So, or not even fans of the sport, excuse me. So that's a factor that he doesn't need to worry about. But not only that, here's the reason why the NFL is doing this. It's all numbers. It's all viewership. He's the second biggest artist in the world. He had one of the best tours of all time as far as like just from a revenue generation standpoint. It just makes sense to have someone who is at the height of their career like Bad Bunny is to perform at your events to get viewers and or numbers. Because NFL knows, listen, if we can tap into the Hispanic demographic, we can get a whole new chunk of fans, a whole new chunk of people buying into football, going to the games, buying the merch. It's a whole other side of revenue that can be tapped if we utilize one of the biggest artists who just so happen to be Hispanic, right? So they're doing it from that standpoint, from a revenue generation standpoint. They're also doing it from a viewership standpoint. Because next year, the World Cup's going to be in America. And the World Cup historically has done better numbers than the Super Bowl, obviously, because the World Cup is fucking the world. It's not just a sport that's predominantly played in America. So they want to be able to compete with numbers for the World Cup, right? Because every time the World Cup is around, that Super Bowl gets beat in numbers, literally. So if you have one of the biggest artists in the world, people who normally would not watch the biggest Latin artists in the world, people who normally would never watch the Super Bowl, who don't give a fuck about football, are going to tune in just to see Bad Bunny perform. So you get a whole new fucking population of viewership watching into your game, and this is going to just increase the numbers so they can compete with the World Cup that's coming into America numbers-wise and viewership-wise. That's all it is. And look, from a marketing standpoint, it's actually a really good idea from the NFL. If they're looking just at revenue and they're looking at just at viewership, right? Which that's the only thing these companies care about, bro. They don't care about the sport. They care about, they would fucking turn the sport inside out if it meant them making more money and getting more viewers. These franchises don't give a shit. None of them do. So that's all it is, right? That's all it is. Now I'm gonna enjoy myself watching the Super Bowl, primarily just to see Bad Bunny perform. I don't give a fuck who's in the Super Bowl. Now the Jets are in the Super Bowl with Bad Bunny performing, which is not gonna happen. That will be hype. I would be extremely fucking hype. Yo, Jets, please, bro, get it together, man. Win a fucking game for once. So that will be the greatest Super Bowl of all time, in my opinion, man. And listen, you're in for a good performance. Either way, man, you're going to be in for a good performance, right? Bad Bunny is going to bring the fucking house down. That I promise you. Even if you're not a fan, you're going to vibe to it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun watch. It's not going to be a boring watch whatsoever. So I do suggest that you tune in and stop being fucking, stop saying, oh, I'm boycotting the Super Bowl over this, because it's really not that serious, bro. It's not that serious whatsoever. But, dude, yeah, they're just trying to compete. They're trying to leverage the best artists in the world, second biggest artists in the world, to compete numbers-wise for the World Cup and gain additional revenue from a demographic that historically just doesn't watch their sport. I get it. Culturally, does it make sense? No, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, having Bad Bunny perform at the Super Bowl really doesn't make sense. Having them perform at the World Cup, yes. Having them perform at, like, the freaking MLB World Series, yes. Or having them perform at, like, the I forgot the competition they have, like, fucking is basically like the World Cup of, like, baseball. I forgot. The World Classic, I think it's called. Yes, having them perform there makes sense. But Super Bowl, not so much, to be honest with you. So I do give him credit for that. It really doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense to have a predominantly Spanish speaker perform at an event that's of predominantly white people that speak English. Like, it doesn't make sense whatsoever. But listen, man, either way, I'm happy about it. I'm going to watch. I'm going to have a good time. I suggest that you just accept it, have a good time as well, because at the end of the day, it's still going to be a cool performance, that I promise you. But that's this week's episode, man. We went over fucking the history of Puerto Rico, the history of the island, the history of reggaeton, fucking Bad Bunny. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, enjoy your week, and I hope you tune into next year's Super Bowl for Bad Bunny. Peace out.